Hey, what's up? This is Chris, Duke Saw Salvage, Traverse Creek Incorporated. We're in Beaver Falls, PA.
I'm Hailey. I'm his daughter.
Yeah, I got a special guest with us today. And we're going to talk, well, I'm going to explain to her some of the differences between these saws. I've got some big old saws here, and we'll just go over the models real quick. I got a Mcculloch 163, which is a big 1960s gear drive chainsaw, 80 cc's.
Okay.
This is a Stihl 045 AV. I think this thing's about 75 cc's, real similar chassis to the 056, 056 Super, 056 Magnum.
Okay.
Of course,
I definitely know what you're talking about.
Right,
yeah.
right. Well, that's why we're talking about this stuff today. So, yeah, this is like the predecessor to the 056. It's around 75 cc's, I believe. And then here we have that Husqvarna 2100 that I talked about in the last video. So first what we're going to do is I'll set these ones off to the side and we'll talk about this old Mcculloch here. So this Mcculloch here was actually manufactured before both of us were born. It's kind of an ancient style chainsaw. It's a gear drive, and what a gear drive is it has a transmission in it. So in the old days, what they used to do is they would have, because they couldn't get the RPMs as high and the engines didn't make as much power as they do now, so what they did was they would put a gear reduction transmission on it. So for every time the engine would spin once, the transmission would spin maybe a half a turn. It would broaden the torque. Okay, so it could put more torque to the cutting attachment, and they would use half-inch pitch chain, which is like an incredibly large chassis of chain. It's like twice as big as what like the 3/8 stuff is now.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, see, this saw is yellow.
Yes.
And it's a saw.
Yes, it's a chainsaw. And it currently doesn't run, but it should with a little bit of effort here. It has a big right-hand start. This is your transmission here. You actually put your bar oil tank is right here, okay? It's got the full wrap handlebar on it. This is actually your bar pad here, and like this would be like your clutch cover, your tensioners all kind of integrated into this little rig here. So this is like you put the bar in there, and then you just tighten this up to tension the chain up. Do you know why you tension the chain?
Because you have to tension the chain.
Right.
Hailey is speaking facts.
Very, very intelligent. Thank you for your input on that one. And this thing was back in the day. It has points ignition, so it doesn't have an electronic ignition. So you've got your coil, and then you've got a condenser, and you've got points, which are all kind of underneath this cover here. And then we're going to open this up, and we're going to take a look under the hood here.
Okay.
Oh, also, yeah, the tank. It's also missing this tank vent here. Like I think the Mccullochs used like a big piece of sintered brass in there. Missing. If you look here, this thing doesn't have a fuel filter in it, like a typical modern day fuel filter. It's got a big felt pad in it. And the felt pad acts as a fuel filter. And how's it smell?
Really bad.
How's that tank smell?
What?
Yeah, it smells like old varnish gas, doesn't it?
Don't smell a saw thing, guys.
There you go. Another
Hailey is speaking facts.
Hailey's facts. Take this cover off, see? 163. Mcculloch Corporation.
Where did it say that? Oh, I thought you were showing me inside.
Air filter's pretty beat.
Yeah.
Inside we got a Tillotson HL63E. I think I took this one apart and I just cleaned it, but it was all full of gunk and it needs new diaphragms and stuff because this thing's 50-something years old. And it'll pop on prime, but it won't stay running. But I guarantee you, after I put some diaphragms in it, she'll run good. I just haven't gotten around to it. These are the old HL carburetor. Pretty neat rig. This actually has the integrated choke in it. Some of them didn't. Like the old 250s had like the you push it and it's got like a cup that goes over the carburetor. Mcculloch played around a lot with these machines here. They had their own style of carburetors. They had carburetors with primers. They had carburetors without choke butterflies. This here, Haley, is a choke butterfly, and what this does
What?
is see how it closes? Okay. What that does is that makes it so the vacuum created by the engine when you pull on the starter cord will allow it to suck more gasoline up and allow less air in. So the fuel gets pulled up from the tank and then the saw starts easy. You can actually...
Oh, yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
and then
yeah.
you could take it and lock it in place, see? So here, pop it out. Go ahead, push it in and lock it in place. There you go. Now the choke's on, and then unlock it. And then this saw had a manual oil pump.
You need to clean this.
No. This saw had a manual oil pump on it too. And in order to operate the manual oil pump, as you're running the saw, you just push that button, and then it oils the chain.
Oh.
Yeah,
That's
pretty neat.
Convenient, I think.
Big heavy duty starter.
She's stuck on the cord.
Hold on a second, my dog is stuck. So this thing is an old, slow machine, but you could put it in the wood and it'll just chug all the way through it, and it won't quit because it's got a lot of torque. And it's got a lot of power, but it weighs nearly as much as you do. Pick it up and see how heavy it is.
Okay, can I stand?
You certainly can.
Alright guys, I'm gonna pick up a saw.
There you go. What do you think? What do you think? That's your first 80cc gear drive you've ever picked up before.
That's rude. Anyways, I'm back.
So we're going to put this thing back together, and we'll talk a little bit about how this thing goes together too. So a lot of the old Mccullochs, they use like the way that the crankshaft and the bearings went into them were a little bit interesting, and
Were they though?
yes, and different from the way things are now. Okay, so you have like this crankcase piece that fits in here, and then the bearing, the crankshaft bearing would fit in here and then be press fit onto the crankshaft. And then this is how the block is. So it's like the clamshell design that we've talked about before in some of the older videos. You sandwich the bearings between the crankcase and here. Okay, the crankcase, or the engine housing in here, you sandwich the bearing. Okay, with this one you've got it's a full block. It's almost built like how some of the four-stroke engines are nowadays. I think this is a 795 cylinder, but pretty much all the large frame Mcculloch cylinders were the same way. This is your intake. So you would have like your reed valve plate and gasket, and your reeds would be right here. Then this is your intake.
Uh-huh.
And then this is your exhaust right here. So this is where your muffler would be at.
Okay.
Yeah. Here's your crank seal.
Uh-huh.
Here's your other side that the crankcase half goes into. Seals up with an O-ring here and a crank seal. And then there you go.
Okay. I understood all of that.
Yes. And unlike the modern cylinders you get now, they just slip right onto the crankcase. And the bearings are actually part of the crankcase versus part of the complete engine house.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
I'm sure you understand that. You could probably
Yeah,
rebuild
you know,
a saw
I'm
now.
actually a master at this stuff. So guys, if you don't understand it after that explanation, well,
I'm your girl.
yeah, come to me because I can explain everything that he just said.
Right. So, and then like in the later models, like the 10 series Mccullochs, they went to the clamshell design where you have the bearing sandwiched in between like the crankcase and the cylinder itself. I think this is like I gotta measure it. I think it's like a ProMac 700 or something like that. I gotta get a look at it. But yeah, this is the style that they went to. Instead of a vertically split crankcase. Now we're going to move into the 045. Now, this is an 045. It's kind of a slanted cylinder. It's not a horizontal or a vertical cylinder. It's a slanted cylinder design. Okay. So the Husqvarna 2100 would be a vertical cylinder design, and most saws you see today outside of top handles are a vertical cylinder design. But so it means the piston and cylinder go straight up and down like this. But that Mcculloch and a lot of the older saws had a horizontal cylinder design, so the piston and cylinder sits like this, like that direction.
Okay.
So this one was like a lot of the ones from this era from Stihl, like 031, 032, were kind of like this mixed design where it's kind of like a slanted cylinder. This series of saw, I believe, started with the 045, and then went to the 045 Super, and then the 056, 056 Super, and 056 Magnum. I believe this has a 50 millimeter cylinder bore, okay? And the 056 went all the way up to 56 millimeters. These are kind of legendary saws. The 056 was pretty damn good saw in its day. These had a couple interesting caveats with the ignition. The older style had a Bosch points, and then it went to I think this is still a points. Yeah, I think this is still a points ignition. So it started out with a Bosch points ignition, and then it went to a Bosch electronic ignition, which historically had problems. Okay,
I'm sure it did.
And they failed. So they went to an SEM type ignition, which is used on the Husqvarna 2100. I think the Dalmar 133, 166. I think they were all kind of using that one at the time that sits underneath the flywheel. And the SEM started having problems. And a gentleman figured out how to fix the 056 Bosch electronic ignition by just going in there and putting a resistor in it or something, and it's a good fix and it works, and that's what people have been doing now. So at one time the Bosch ignitions weren't worth anything because they were failure prone and people were paying good money for the SEMs. But after the fix was out, guys really got into the Bosch. They wanted to buy the Bosch ones because you could repair them. You can't repair the SEMs. And then they also had different starters on them, like the older models had the Fairbanks Morse style. I believe this one does too. And it has a nylon cup in here, and there's starter pawls that engage this cup and turn it over. But the later models have the standard Stihl flywheel pawl now, or starter pawl now. What do you think of that?
Batty.
And then we'll take a little quick look under the hood of this thing. This thing I had bought from somebody. I got it running. It was running pretty good. But I got to rebuild the carburetor on it. I've got the diaphragms back there. I just haven't gotten to it yet. This thing's got an outboard clutch. No chain brake, no safety stuff on it. Some of the later model 56s and 45s had it. But they've... those things have kind of dried up. You don't see too many of those brake covers out anymore.
Okay.
These are an interesting saw to work on too. You could take this handle off and kind of, once you disconnect it, you could just flip it up and it kind of pops open like a hood, and you can work underneath it.
Okay.
Failures on the muffler is very common on these. They go bad.
What's a muffler?
Muffler's where the exhaust comes out of. This right here.
Okay.
Just like on a car.
Okay, I don't know anything about cars, but I know everything about saws, guys.
Right. Yeah, you're learning right now.
Yeah.
So.
No, I know everything. All right. I came out of the womb and I knew everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, that's just the type of person you are. Somebody that knows everything.
Yeah.
A regular know-it-all. What can we say? So yeah, there's big clutch here, automatic oil pump, and then it's got the carburetor that sits back in here. This is the way your air box is. The intake goes in like at this direction. You got your this is your choke. It's your on-off switch. Here's your gas tank starter, oil tank, and then here's those mufflers.
Why does it sound like there's liquid in it?
Because there is. This is an aftermarket air filter cover they've come out with in the last few years.
Okay.
Pretty decent.
I guess.
Yes.
Can I pick this one up too?
You can. Let me get this thing back together here.
Okay.
I'm currently fumbling with it because I'm on camera, and that's the only way to do something like this. There it is. Put the clutch cover back on it.
I know what's going on, guys.
Yeah.
I know what's happening.
All right, now you get to do your part.
Guys, I'm gonna pick it up. Ready?
What do you think? How's the sideways balance of it?
I didn't even.
Huh?
Okay.
Did you like it?
I don't. It doesn't feel any different, but okay.
Okay.
No.
Here's the old Husky 2100. This
Was
sucker,
it made then?
This was made, I think it was made like in '83, I want to say. I got this off of Dave Smith. It's got the full wrap on it. I love this saw. I've been looking for one, and when he came over for that interview that day, if you check it out, yeah, he brought this with him, and then we were able to work out a bargain on it. And it needed a top end. I've got some cylinder kits here for him. And carburetor rebuild and the crank seal. The reason it scored in the first place was the crank seal was bunged up on the PTO side, which is pretty common for a lot of chainsaws. The PTO side, crank seal always kind of it's under a lot of duress, so a lot of times they fail, and then you score the cylinder. This saw's got a couple of imperfections with it, but I don't mind at all. I'm not really like the restoration type, so I kind of like the patina that's on it.
What?
It's got a patina.
Oh yeah, that.
Yeah, yeah. It's like when something shows its age a little bit, but still looks nice. Like this saw looks nice. It's not beat to crap.
Are you sure?
And but it's nice for its age. It's a nice specimen, as far as I'm concerned. But it's just my opinion, man. So this has a busted grill there. I think one of the baffles in the muffler kind of jangles around a little bit. It needed a top end. It needed a carburetor rebuild. It needed a crank seal. And something strange was that the tank would leak fuel when I filled it up. And I did like a pressure test of the tank, and it was actually bubbling out of the seam. So what I did was I took a little bit of Honda Bond, and like I cleaned up this area along the seam here, and then along the seam here, and then I just took the Honda Bond and put it on my finger and pressed it into there and just kept rubbing it into there, and it hasn't leaked a drop since. I had it sitting in my car for 2 days, and it never smelled like fuel at all. These are 100cc saw, so they're big, powerful saw that were used to cut timber and for tree services, and these have a pretty strong following of guys. I'd say probably maybe even more so than that 045, 056, and certainly more than that big Mcculloch gear drive. That Mcculloch gear drive, it's kind of a neat talking piece, but I don't know how much of a collector's item it is in the scale of Mcculloch chainsaws. Yeah, that people like. But yeah, that's it. I just wanted to talk about some of these old saws and how I like them, and I like a lot of the new modern saws as far as usability and reliability and parts availability. But I gotta say, the old ones really are what I think. So I appreciate you sharing this moment with me and sharing your oodles of knowledge with everyone, because you're kind of like the chainsaw girl. What do you do?
I am a chainsaw
Do you want to come
master.
here? Sure. Do you want to be in the next one?
Yes.
Okay. Sounds good to me. That's it. That's all I got.
Get out of my chair.
Wow, that's rude.